big 4.50s.
Yeah. And coming into this weekend, we had 3 potential winners. And it was a huge bummer to start off the 450 Moto 1, not even a full lap into that moto, and really eliminate a title challenger and contender right off the bat.
Yeah, because I mean, looking at his practice time, Chase was not far off of Jett, which isn't always an indicator of anything, but it's better to have him be close in practice times than not be close. So I really wanted to see the race between him and Jett, or whoever he'd be racing against. And also wanted to see another interview with him on if he liked his bike setup or not. I feel really cheated right now. We didn't get that.
Yeah.
Because I want to know, did it get better with the week they had off? Or was Chase going to be not satisfied with his bike setup, but just making it work? So I was very curious about that. But yeah, man, my heart broke when the camera panned back and you saw his ripped jersey. And then the more they played the replay, kind of the worse it got each time. You got more of a better view of how much of an impact that was.
Yeah.
And also his fault, though. Like, that's all on him.
Yeah, I do chalk it up to a racing incident just because as much as people will probably want to hate on Barcia and he takes everybody out and this and that, there's nothing he could have done because they were in 2 different rhythm options and Barcia was already committed and in the air. And once you're in the air, like, you can't do anything. And
they weren't even like a bike length difference. They were pretty,
Yeah, and to your point, Chase should have known better. I understand what he was trying to go after because
for sure,
the way that double was positioned so closely to the exit of that 90-degree right-handed corner, you couldn't really double it, especially from the inside. Even on a 450, like, there's no way you're going to make that jump. You know, maybe it's just one of those things where the moment just kind of got the best of him and he's just thinking of, I need to get to the front. I mean, he wasn't at the very front. It was Jett Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence and Eli Tomac up at the very front. So that's probably all he could think about. So I do kind of sympathize with him on that. But then again, though, it's just one of those unfortunate events that we have. And that's all of us do, whether we race or not. You know, we all prepare for the worst. We sign on the dotted line when we swing our leg over a dirt bike. With that being said, I'm glad it wasn't worse. Like, I think of other scenarios where, I mean, Trey Kennard at Los Angeles, or the Dodger Stadium way back. I think that was 2011, I want to say, where he got landed on. I mean, that was absolutely brutal. And, you know, to see both Barcia and Chase essentially kind of ride away from that was a very good sign. I know that Chase he's obviously not racing Motocross of Nations, who we will get into who his replacement is if you haven't heard. Yeah, it's just a bummer to see Chase not continue on throughout the motos, but I'm glad it wasn't worse. And this isn't really impacting 2025 Supercross, maybe too much, meaning he doesn't have a neck injury or a vertebrae fracture or anything like that. Sounds like it's just a hand injury and that he'll be able to ride the bike somewhat soon.
When you put that into context and perspective of him probably knowing where he was and who's in front of him, and he's learned, you can't lose any time to those guys. He made the right decision as in the sense of, I immediately need to do something and start working forward. But man, if he could have just waited an extra second and rolled down that corner, took a right, then Barcia probably would have spun him off the track. So who knows? Like, it either was going to be his fault by going into Barcia, or maybe Barcia just would have moved him, and then it would have been Barcia's fault.
On a much happier note, while we're kind of on this Chase Sexton's topic still, a lot of us were jumping to the conclusion of, oh my gosh, Team USA, Motocross of Nations, it's only about 2 weeks from now. Luckily, Eli Tomac stepped up to the plate like a badass, and he will be taking Chase Sexton's spot as the captain of Team USA. So really cool of Eli to do that on last minute notice. Pretty much just got to fly over there because it's not this weekend, but the following weekend, they race over in Great Britain. These guys seem like they're just never going to break, but hats off to Eli Tomac because he is an absolute badass.
Eli's getting no shortage of gate drops coming back from his injury. I'm very excited to see that.
Yeah.
I hope come A1, he is just primed and ready to race.
And it seems like not even each race, each moto, he's getting a little bit better, whether it's speed, intensity, the starts. The starts have really come around because I think back to his Monster Energy Kawasaki days. In some races, you'd see him up there, but it was kind of few and far between. And then the other races, it's like, where is Eli Tomac? Like, you just cannot find him. And then it seems like since he made the switch to Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha back in 2022, the starts were dialed. And now that he's on the scoop tire, it's like, oh, good luck. Like, the dude's on the fastest bike. He's the most aggressive when it comes to the throttle and the clutch. And now he's on a scoop tire, like, good luck beating this guy off the gate.
Had Tomac not messed up the rhythm and lost some time to Lawrence, do you think he would have held Lawrence off for the first moto win? Or do you think Jett is still going to Jett? So whether Tomac makes a mistake or not, he is still going to track him down.
I still think he gets him.
Yeah.
I just think he.
Fuck, he's good. His pass was awesome.
Yeah.
The way he scrubbed it and kept so close and kept that inside, like, oh, that's.
Yeah, he's so good. They both just had phenomenal rides, and I think Jett just had that little bit extra in the tank towards the later end of the moto. Whether that's fitness, I mean, I don't even know if you can chalk up to that, because we all know Eli Tomac trains his ass off, and he's really fit. Maybe it's just better line choice and just being a little bit faster in some areas of the track, but kind of just seemed like he had Eli on the ropes there. Kind of saw Eli kind of looking over his shoulder, kind of making some mistakes a little bit, and Jett was able to capitalize on that, and he was able to just, I want to say cruise on home to a Moto win, but he's able to ride it on home. He carried that momentum into Moto 2 and just was like, I'm out front later. I'm not going to let Hunter get too close, but I'm just going to maintain that 2 to 3 second gap, what I've been doing pretty much since I've moved up to the 450s. Good on him for becoming a 2-time Super Motocross world champion, just because we've only had 2 of these things. And in both 250 and 450 class, Hayden Deegan and Jett Lawrence are being quite selfish with the championships and the money that comes along with it, for sure. So I hope for year 3, just for the competition's sake, somebody else can win.
I really enjoyed watching how Eli was riding the track and then how Jett was. With that first moto, with there only being like maybe a second between them, it was just cool to watch Eli do a corner and then Jett do that same corner and see sometimes the similar riding styles and then oftentimes the difference in riding styles. Notably just how centered Jett is. That head doesn't really move too much. He's just very centered on that bike. And Eli, centered, but when he needs to, he moves around on that thing and he pushes and manhandles that bike.
For sure.
When he needs to. And it just blows my mind that a dude like Jett can go just as fast as Tomac, but yet make it look easier and smoother. That's where I throw my hands up and go like, how?
If you told Jett ride like Tomac, you'd probably be like, what? Like, yeah, exactly. So it's just so crazy that there's so many different ways you can skin the cat, and these guys can do it. And this kind of segues into our third rider, Hunter Lawrence, who also looked really smooth and calculated. Yeah. And I thought he was going to have something for his younger brother there early on in 450 Moto 2, but just couldn't quite get close enough. And he just kind of was at that 2 to 3 second mark, and that's kind of the make it or break it point. Once you kind of lose that toe around the track, it's kind of like, it's going to be so hard to mount a charge up towards the front. It's almost insurmountable, it seems like, because you have to wait for a mistake almost to get invited back in that bubble to make a pass or even challenge for a pass.
Yeah, good point, man. And Hunter was not too far back in third when he finished that first moto either. He was the leader's a mistake away from Hunter closing a gap on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, Eli is in a challenging spot. You got Jett in front of him chasing. Can't make a mistake. You're just going to have Hunter right on his butt.
If you're Hunter Lawrence and you're on the flight home back to Florida, how are you feeling? Are you thinking, man, I'm bummed because I was this close and I came up short? Or are you thinking, okay, arguably the fastest dude in the world would finish right ahead of me, not only in points, but also on the track? Like, I'm in a good spot heading into 2025.
No, I'm big brother. That's little brother. Fuck him. Like, I beat you in everything. I was born first. I get most of the attention. Like, I'm the little brother in my family. And that's just how things go. I love my brother, but we went and played Topgolf, and I went to visit him like a year ago, and he hadn't golfed in years. He fucking beat me. Like, there's just this older brother thing that is ingrained in their head that no matter what they compete with little bro in, they almost always win. So I think on the inside, it's fucking eating him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big bro. He's the alpha. So, like, family-wise, I'm sure he's happy, but internally, he wants to beat him.
For sure.
And I'm waiting for that punt to happen. He's going to get tired of it one time, and he is going to... Maybe it's happened before at the test track, and the family's already figured out a way to not let this bubble up and rise up, but I think it happens one time.
Other riders in the 450 class, Christian Craig, who is moving on to a new home. Any guesses on that?
Ooh, he always looked pretty good on some of those blue bikes. Could be a good mentor for somebody eventually moving up to the 450s. It just, seems like a good guy that's been around for a while, has a similar riding style maybe as somebody else. It could be a good fit.
Yeah, very friendly with a very popular teenager in the 250 class.
Yes.
So we'll have to see which color bike he chooses for 2025 because he's got some options. But
what do you think the riders thought of their bike setups? Like, do you think anybody was struggling out there? Because we didn't really get much interviews on that this go around.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. To me, it looked like the most supercrossy track. So I imagine they were running the most supercross setting they have out of all 3 rounds on SMX for it. But I'm curious how that felt on that track. Because they had some big combos, like the couple quad section.
Yep.
They were going through, and the landing was so short. And we watched a few guys just tag the landing as well. And if you tag that landing without proper supercross suspension, you're bottoming and getting bucked over the bars.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how that felt elsewhere on the track, where it looked like kind of Lake Elsinore, just hard pack, and where they rip the dirt, it kind of clumps up instead of kind of breaking apart. And that's hard to ride on a motorbike. Can't imagine what it's like on an SX bike.
For sure. Yeah, I can't even imagine. One guy who I saw comment on bike setup was Ken Roxon, who recently made the switch from Showa suspension to KYB suspension when it comes to Supercross, because he would race and ride KYB suspension outdoors, much like we saw him ride the 2023 High Point round aboard KYBs. But during 2023 Supercross, he was active ride, who is his suspension tuner, but Showa componentry.
Yes.
Now he is on KYB, both motocross and Supercross.
Interesting.
So making the switch in componentry between the two, it sounds like they're learning and fiddling through some different bike setups, both fork and shock, I would assume, for Kenny. And just my first observation was, well, where was he in 450 Moto 1? He was way back for a little while, ended up making some passes and getting up into the top 10. And Moto 2 was definitely a better step in the right direction. But
him and Barsha had a good battle going on.
Yeah, for sure. That was cool. They highlighted that on the broadcast. But yeah, that was one rider. I saw a comment on that. A lot of these guys make a bike look really good. So it's almost hard to decipher whether if the bike's doing anything bad, in the sense of these guys have really good technique. Like if you watch a guy like Jett, like his bike doesn't really step out a whole lot. So I have a hard time criticizing their bike when we know it's a damn good bike because it's a factory, it's a works Honda. So
yeah,
like,
it's better than stock.
For sure. It's really good. And then you have a rider whose technicality, he can ride that bike to its potential. And his technicality and, let's say, technique on the bike can really make a bike look good. Even if he's coming back and telling his mechanic this bike rides like a piece of shit, he can still make it look really good. So all the bikes look really good to me, man. Any of the riders that stood out to you over the weekend?
Yeah, nothing I could really pick out setup-wise. I was definitely trying to watch the bikes, but it didn't seem like anybody was really struggling with the bike, at least what we got to see on camera for it. So it seemed like everybody had a pretty well dialed in suspension setup for there. I'm curious what everybody's going to go focus on for our off time now. I'm wondering what Tomac is thinking, what he has to work on. He's got to have some good races now against the Lawrence brothers. He knows how they race the entire race now. So I'm curious what he goes and works on for the off season. Does he focus a lot on bike setup? Does he focus on himself, or maybe race craft and strategy in terms of how he approaches the race? If he maybe rides at 90% for the first, 17 minutes and then lays it down the last 3 minutes, I assume he's going to have some update in his strategy to figure out a way to beat Jett. Because if he keeps sticking to what he's doing now, I don't know if that's always going to give him the upper hand.
For sure.
I'm sure it will sometimes, but I think Jett is forcing everybody to reevaluate what their program is and to step it up. Yeah,
absolutely. Well said. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for the JBI Race Recap Las Vegas SMX Finale Edition. Drop your pick who is going to win Motocross of Nations in just under 2 weeks' time. I'm biased, but I'm going to say Team USA goes out and wins. I think you're going to say the same thing as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of you will probably say Team USA, but any of you foreigners are watching this, please drop your pick down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear, and it's going to be awesome. And Madeline Basin in a few weeks' time. But again, that's going to wrap it up. We really appreciate you guys watching. We will see you guys in the next one.